The Enigma of Vireon, a fight for freedom. Prologue: The fall. The temperature inside Cypher's suit climbed to critical levels. The life support system blinked an urgent red, and each breath grew heavier as the filters struggled against the planet's toxic atmosphere. For 6 days, Cypher, Declan, and Red had fought to survive in the nightmare of a world destroyed by an interdimensional experiment, one Cypher had inadvertently set in motion. They trudged toward an abandoned research station, their last hope. The landscape around them was a living nightmare. Gravity fluctuated between weightlessness and unbearable pressure, lightning sliced through a cloudless sky, and anomalies pulsed with an ominous glow, alive in their erratic movements. Every step was a gamble with death. Red tightened his grip on his weapon, his gaze fixed on the crumbling ruins ahead. "This station is our last chance, Cypher. If we don't find something, it's over for us." Declan scanned the horizon, his voice firm with grim resolve. "If it's all destroyed, I'd rather die fighting than suffocate on this damned rock." Cypher cut through the tension with a sharp tone. "Less talk. Stick together. We're not dead yet." The station loomed before them, a skeletal husk of its former glory. Cracks in its walls leaked a faint blue light, and inside, everything seemed steeped in a foreboding, otherworldly energy. Organic growths clung to the walls, pulsating as if alive, while the air thrummed with an inexplicable hum. In the central chamber, they found what they had been searching for, a massive crystal encased in a protective field. Its vivid blue light filled the room, dancing across the debris-strewn floor. The energy emanating from it was tangible, almost alive. Cypher's eyes lit up with recognition. "This is it. The crystal. Its energy could power our ship and get us off this planet." Red glanced around nervously. "You're sure it's not a trap? All this chaos around us, it's got to be because of it." Declan smirked, stepping closer. "Trap or not, we don't have a choice. Risk it or die here." Cypher ignored their bickering and approached the control console. His fingers flew across the keys, inputting commands to disable the containment field. A low hum filled the air as the barrier began to dissolve. But the moment the shield disappeared, the entire station began to tremble. Cracks spiderwebbed across the walls, and the floor shifted underfoot. Red's voice cracked with fear. "You've triggered something. We need to leave, now." Cypher approached the crystal, carefully extracting a fragment. A split second later, a surge of energy coursed through him, electrifying his nerves with a mix of exhilaration and terror. "No time for fear!" Cypher shouted, securing the shard in a protective container. "Run for the exit!" But halfway out, Declan suddenly stopped. Raising his weapon, he spoke with an unsettling calm. "You don't get it, Cypher. This crystal is worth more than all our lives combined. The corporation will pay a fortune for it. But they don't need you anymore. You've become a liability." Cypher froze, realization dawning. "You planned this from the start?" Declan shrugged with a cold smile. "Orders are orders. The crystal's yours now, too unstable to transport anyway. Consider it your problem." Before Cypher could respond, Declan fired. The shot echoed through the collapsing station. Red crumpled to the floor, lifeless. Cypher dove for cover, but the next shot grazed his shoulder, knocking him down. Blood seeped through his suit, pain ripping through him. Declan cast one last glance at the crumbling structure. "Good luck, Cypher. You'll need it." With that, he disappeared into the chaos of falling debris. Left alone, Cypher lay on the cold floor, his strength fading. The walls groaned as they buckled, and debris rained down around him. Just as his vision began to blur, the crystal shard in his hand glowed brighter. Its light flooded the chamber, and a voice echoed in his mind. "Get up, you're not finished yet." The crystal's energy surged into him, sealing his wound and restoring his strength. Cypher's mind expanded, filling with new knowledge, while his body felt reborn. He stood shakily but with a fire in his eyes. He was no longer the man who had entered this station. Emerging from the ruins, clutching the shard tightly in his hand, Cypher gazed out at the desolate horizon and quietly whispered, "I survived once. I'll survive again." Part 1. Azarian's Offer. The metallic screech of ripping hull panels filled the cabin as Laron's ship spiraled out of control. Lights flickered wildly, casting jagged shadows across the cramped cockpit. Sparks erupted from a damaged console, and the sharp smell of burning wires filled the air. "Stabilize, damn it!" Laron shouted, gripping the controls with white-knuckled hands. The ship bucked violently, throwing him against the harness as alarms blared in his ears. Through the viewport, the planet loomed, a swirling mass of gray skies and jagged terrain. Vireon. Laron had heard rumors about this place, whispers of its dangers. None of that mattered now. He was crashing, and survival was the only thing on his mind. The impact hit like a hammer. The ship skidded across the rocky surface, throwing up a storm of dust and debris. Finally, it came to a grinding halt, the cockpit tilting precariously to one side. Laron groaned, pain shooting through his ribs as he unbuckled himself. The cabin was dim, lit only by the faint flicker of emergency lights. Smoke coiled lazily in the air, and outside, an eerie silence settled over the barren landscape. He staggered to his feet, grabbing a handheld scanner. "Not how I planned my day," he muttered bitterly, his voice hoarse. His sharp eyes swept over the desolation beyond the cracked viewport. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground like broken teeth, and faint glimmers of blue light pulsed in the distance. "Maybe there's something valuable here," he whispered, forcing a smirk despite the pain. After prying open the damaged hatch, Laron climbed out, his boots crunching against the gravelly surface. A chill wind whipped around him, carrying whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. He wasn't alone, he could feel it. Ahead, something sparkled. A faint, otherworldly glow drew his attention. A crystal. It stood embedded in the ground, radiating a soft, hypnotic light. It was beautiful, and Laron's instincts kicked in. Opportunity. "At least I won't leave empty-handed," he said with a wry grin, limping toward the crystal. As he reached out, the air around him grew heavy, almost tangible. His hand hovered inches from the surface when a voice broke the stillness. "Do you always talk to yourself, or am I just lucky today?" Laron froze. The voice was calm, yet laced with a playful undertone. His gaze darted around, but no one was there. Slowly, he looked back at the crystal. "Don't worry," the voice continued. "It's just us." Laron's mouth went dry. He took a cautious step back, his mind racing. You're the crystal?" A soft hum resonated in the air, almost like laughter. "Not just a crystal," the voice replied smoothly. "You can call me Azarian, and you must be Laron, the reckless traveler." "How do you know my name?" Laron demanded, his voice a mix of suspicion and intrigue. Azarian's glow pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. "I see many things, hear many things. You, however, are particularly hard to ignore." Laron's instincts screamed caution, but curiosity burned brighter. "So, what are you? Some kind of alien intelligence?" Azarian paused as if considering the question. "You could say that. I've been here for longer than you can imagine, watching civilizations rise and fall. Now I watch you." Laron crossed his arms, the wheels in his mind already turning. "All right, Azarian. Why start talking to me now?" Azarian's tone grew serious. "Because you're different. You're searching for something beyond power or glory. I can help you, but it will cost you." The faint tension in the air thickened. Laron's eyes narrowed. He had made countless deals in his life, and he could smell one coming a mile away. "And what's the price?" he asked cautiously. Azarian's glow brightened, casting shifting shadows on the rocky ground. "Our fates will be intertwined. I can repair your ship, send you back into the stars. But once you accept my help, there is no turning back." A chill ran down Laron's spine. For a moment he hesitated, weighing his options. But he was a survivor, a gambler. He had built his life on taking chances. "All right," he said, his voice firm. "Fix the ship. Get me out of here." Azarian's light intensified, enveloping Laron in a warm, radiant glow. The ground beneath him vibrated slightly, and the crystal shards around him lifted into the air, spinning in a mesmerizing dance. "Very well," Azarian said, "but remember, nothing is free." The air crackled with energy, and a portal of swirling blue light erupted before Leron. It swallowed him and his ship in an instant. When the light faded, Leron found himself floating in the cold expanse of space. His ship was whole, the damage gone. He let out a slow breath, his heart pounding in his chest. As he looked back at the distant planet of Vireon, a faint smile tugged at his lips. Part 2. Leron's growing ambition. Leron couldn't stop thinking about Vireon. The crystal's hypnotic glow haunted him, a promise of power and opportunity too tempting to ignore. Returning to the planet, his ship landed with more precision than before. This time, he was prepared. "Just a few more crystals," Leron muttered as he stepped onto the shimmering terrain, the memory of Azarian's voice lingering in his mind. The air was thick with tension, but Leron didn't let it slow him down. His ambition burned brighter than any warning. Azarian appeared the moment Leron approached another cluster of crystals. "Back so soon?" The entity's tone was calm, but there was an undertone of disapproval. "You've only just left." Leron crouched near a crystal, studying its structure. "I told you, Azarian, these crystals are changing lives. They're guiding people home, helping explorers survive the unknown." He looked up, his smile sharp. "I'm doing good work. And yet you take more than you return," Azarian replied, his glow flickering faintly. "This planet is not a bottomless well, Leron." Leron brushed off the warning. "Energy flows back to the planet, doesn't it? You've said it yourself, it's a cycle. Not when the cycle is broken," Azarian countered, but Leron wasn't listening anymore. The crystals became the foundation of Leron's empire. With Azarian's assistance, he transported them across the galaxy, marketing their light as hope for those lost in the void. His slogan, "Carry a crystal, and it will guide you home," spread like wildfire. At first, the energy returned to Vireon as promised, but something shifted. Leron's ambitions grew faster than the planet could sustain. He expanded operations, pushing for bigger shipments and bolder experiments. Azarian's warnings became a background hum, easily ignored. "Progress always comes with risks," Leron told himself. "And the reward? It's worth it." Part 3. The Planet's Warning. Rising tensions in Leron's empire. Back on his ship, Leron reclined in the pilot's chair, a glass of amber liquid in hand. The cabin was dim, save for the soft glow of the crystals stacked in the cargo hold. Their light was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. But Leron's thoughts were elsewhere. The transmission from Tessa had been brief but unsettling. Rumors of accidents involving the crystals were spreading, ships malfunctioning, unstable energy spikes, even reports of strange, unexplainable phenomena. "Minor glitches," Leron muttered to himself, brushing off the concerns. "Nothing we can't fix." But the truth gnawed at the edges of his confidence. The crystals were powerful, yes, but they were also unpredictable. And the more he pushed, the less control he seemed to have. The comm system chimed, pulling him from his thoughts. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the face of another associate, grim and tense. "We've got a problem," the man said, his voice tight. "One of the shipments, it exploded. Took out half a station." Leron's grip on his glass tightened. "What do you mean, exploded?" "These crystals don't. They do now," the man interrupted. "Whatever you're doing, it's destabilizing them. People are starting to ask questions, Leron. Big questions." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Leron staring at the empty space where the hologram had been. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Was Azarian right? Was he pushing too far? Leron returned to Vireon once more, but the planet's demeanor had shifted. The once faint tremors had grown into violent quakes, and the crystalline landscape seemed darker, its glow dim and erratic. Even the air felt heavier, pressing down on him like an unseen force. Azarian met him at the edge of a crystal field, his form flickering with a tension Leron hadn't seen before. "You feel it now, don't you?" Azarian said, his voice sharp. The planet is nearing its breaking point. Laron scoffed, though the unease in his posture betrayed him. It's a planet, Azarian. It can't break. The ground beneath them heaved suddenly, sending Laron stumbling. Shards of crystal erupted from the earth, their jagged edges gleaming like knives. For the first time, Laron felt a sliver of fear. This is just a reaction, he said, trying to steady himself. The planet will stabilize. Azarian voiced a low, ominous rumble. No, Laron. This is a warning. The last one you'll get. Part 4. A Dangerous Gamble. The reports from his mining teams filled the room, their voices overlapping in an incessant stream of data. Laron adjusted his comm headset, silencing the chatter. The tension in their tones was clear enough, something wasn't right. But Laron wasn't about to abandon his empire. If Azarian won't help me, I'll handle this myself, he muttered, pacing before the projection. His hands clasped tightly behind his back, his knuckles white. To minimize risk to himself, Laron had delegated the dangerous work to an elite team on the ground. They operated under strict instructions, excavating deeper into the planet than ever before. The mining operations, cloaked in secrecy, were yielding results far beyond expectations. Crystals flowed in quantities that dwarfed their previous hauls, feeding the insatiable demand of Laron's growing trade empire. In the weeks that followed, the operation reached an unprecedented scale. Massive excavators tore into Vireon's crust, their mechanical arms glinting under the twin suns. Temporary research labs sprang up like colonies of ants, their sterile halls buzzing with the hum of overworked scientists. Each shipment of crystals was a triumph, a glowing testament to human ingenuity and hubris. But cracks were forming, both figuratively and literally. Reports of unstable crystals increased. Shipments were becoming dangerous to handle, with containment units struggling to suppress violent energy surges. Entire mining shafts collapsed unexpectedly, taking machinery, and sometimes lives, with them. Despite the growing risks, Laron pushed harder. Keep digging, he ordered during a tense transmission to the surface teams. His tone was clipped, brooking no argument. We're on the verge of something extraordinary. Don't stop now. Azarian had not appeared since Laron's last visit, and the silence spoke louder than any warning. Yet Laron convinced himself it was a sign of victory. He knows I don't need him anymore. He mused aloud in the solitude of his observation deck. The crystals were his to take, his to control. But the unease in the air was impossible to ignore. The planet seemed alive with resistance. Vireon's tremors, once faint and sporadic, now came with violent regularity. The crystalline fields erupted unpredictably, shooting shards skyward like jagged spears. Even the skies themselves appeared unsettled, with storm clouds swirling in unnatural patterns. From the safety of his station, Laron observed it all, his brow furrowed but his resolve unshaken. This is progress, he told himself, pouring another glass of amber liquid. The planet will adapt. It always has. Part 5. Signs of Rebellion. The tension on Vireon grew worse with each passing day. What had once been a quiet research base was now a busy, chaotic hub, with towering structures rising among the alien landscape. Vireon's strange, colorful plants and crystal formations made the planet both beautiful and terrifying. The twin suns hung in the sky, casting long shadows, while the strange plants swayed, shimmering in the light. Beneath the ground, something unseen seemed to stir with energy. "All right, team!" called the expedition leader, breaking the morning calm. "Today we're going to the laminar cave. Safety first. These crystals are more unpredictable than ever." His voice echoed through the comms, carrying tension despite its routine message. After the recent accidents, nobody was taking these warnings lightly. As the team got ready, the strange smells of the alien plants filled the air. The base, surrounded by the towering crystals, felt like a fortress against the wild, untamed planet. Laron stood watching from above, scanning the horizon. Strange shadows moved in the sky, and the ground beneath him vibrated, as if the planet itself was uneasy. Down by the digging site, a bulldozer operator's voice crackled through the radio. Dr. Ilara, we've hit a full vein of laminar crystals, but something's wrong. The crystals, they're acting strange. It's like they've got a mind of their own. Our equipment's acting up. What should we do? At the control center, Ilara glanced at the screens, each showing strange readings. Exhaustion weighed on her, but she answered calmly. Cool them in the containment units. Maybe that'll settle things. Still, she knew in her gut something was seriously wrong. Near the crystals, 2 astronauts crouched beside a glowing formation. One of them reached out to touch a large crystal. Immediately, the ground around them started to melt, the crystal radiating an intense heat. Steam hissed up from the ground, carrying a strange metallic smell. I thought about taking one of these home, the astronaut said nervously. But now, maybe not. The other astronaut stepped back, eyes wide. The crystal pulsed with blue light, casting an eerie glow across the land. For a moment, the planet seemed to hold its breath. Then, in the distance, a low growl echoed, a reminder that Vireon was far from safe. Elsewhere, a survey team entered a huge crater, only to find themselves floating in the air. The ground beneath them had disappeared, leaving them hovering as if the planet had decided to change the rules. Base? We're stuck. We've been floating above this crystal for an hour. Any idea how to get us down? One of them radioed, their voice edged with panic. Try shooting the crystal. Maybe breaking it will release you, came the shaky reply from command. Clearly, things were spinning out of control. As the day went on, the situation only got worse. Sandstorms whipped across the land, filled with sharp shards of crystal, cutting into the team's gear. Thick dust blocked the suns, turning the world into a swirling mess of light and shadow. Massive creatures, disturbed by the chaos, began appearing from the foggy valleys. Huge beasts, barely visible through the storm, slowly moved toward the mining sites, their steps shaking the ground. Ilara clenched her fists, watching the chaos unfold on her screens. These crystals, they're too unstable, she whispered. The ground rumbled beneath her as if Vireon itself was waking up. One of the engineers, pale and shaking, looked down at the glowing stones in his hands. I've been on hundreds of missions, but these, they feel cursed. Despite the rising danger, Vireon remained calm. From his observation deck, he watched the storm sweep across the land, his mind focused on his growing empire. To him, the crystals were the key to everything. Their power, their potential, was too big to ignore. All these problems? Just challenges to overcome. The glowing lights of the labs below looked like stars in the darkness, symbols of human ambition. Armed with technology and unshakable will, Vireon was sure that nothing, not even the planet itself, could stand in his way. Part 6. The Fall of Control. What started as just another day on Vireon quickly turned into chaos, unraveling all of Vireon's carefully made plans. The sun hung low, casting an orange glow across the planet as Vireon monitored the crystal mining operations. The glowing structure sparkled with promise, but the hum of progress suddenly stopped. The whole command center went dark. What now? Vireon muttered angrily, pacing back and forth. His patience was running out. Did everyone take a break without telling me? As he stared at the dead screens, his communicator buzzed urgently. The news hit him hard. A group of Earth activists had stormed the command center and taken control. These weren't just any workers. They were rebels angry about the galactic minimum wage and the dangerous conditions they faced. They had had enough of the collapsing caves, the deadly wildlife, and the unstable crystals that put their lives at risk every day. Their voices rang through the comms. We demand fair pay and safety. The crystals are ours now, no more exploitation. We're taking them to Earth, and Vireon can go to hell. Vireon stood frozen, gripping the edge of the control desk so tightly his knuckles turned white. His mind raced. This wasn't just a rebellion. The timing and scale felt too coordinated. Someone bigger was behind this, using these Earth workers as pawns in a much larger game. It's a power play, he muttered, trying to piece together the hidden forces at work. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, the universe threw another problem at him. The intergalactic trade portals, those essential lifelines of commerce, began to fail. One by one, they exploded in bursts of energy, sending shockwaves across the galaxy. The portals, powered by the crystals mined from Vireon, had become dangerously unstable. Reports started flooding in, showing twisted wreckage and destroyed trade hubs where bustling space stations had once stood. The chain reaction caused panic across the Galactic Trade Guild. Suddenly, trading between galaxies was like playing a deadly game of chance. "What's causing this? The crystals were supposed to be stable," Vireon roared, slamming his fist down on the console. His brilliant plan was falling apart, and now the galaxy was starting to pay attention. From the dark corners of distant star systems to the gleaming towers of the galaxy's richest cities, one message was spreading fast. "Stop the crystal experiments!" The Galactic Union, usually content to stay out of direct business, was now being forced to act. The crisis on Vireon and the exploding trade portals threatened to upset not just one system, but the entire galactic economy. Virion's face went pale. He wasn't just a businessman anymore. He had become the central figure in a crisis that could tear the galaxy apart. He scrambled to think of solutions, but each idea felt more desperate than the last. The empire he had built was falling apart, and he was teetering on the edge of losing everything. As the screen flickered back to life, Virion's reflection stared back at him, his face twisted with frustration. The world he had created was slipping through his fingers like sand. But even in the midst of chaos, his determination burned brighter. He had come too far to let it all collapse now. "This isn't over," he growled, his voice thick with resolve. He would find a way to regain control, even if it meant crossing every line. Part 7. The Council's Choice. In the grand halls of the Intergalactic Trade Union, soft light from distant stars filtered through transparent domes, casting an otherworldly glow over the room. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy, dressed in shimmering uniforms made of rare materials, sat in clusters. Their conversations were quiet, filled with hidden threats and cautious hope. It felt like the calm before a storm, the kind of atmosphere where the fate of entire worlds could be decided with one word. Vireon stood at the center of it all, looking both powerful and calm, like a predator eyeing its prey. His rise to power had been fast, but now, with so many watching him, the weight of his ambition was being questioned. This meeting would either confirm his control over the galaxy or lead to his downfall. Around him, diplomats, warlords, and powerful business leaders from far-off planets whispered to each other. Their eyes kept darting toward Vireon with suspicion. The political games between them were like a chess match, where every word and action was carefully planned. The chairman of the meeting spoke, his voice full of authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered not just as representatives, but as the ones who will shape the future of the galaxy. The choices we make today will echo across the stars." His tone was serious, as if he could sense the fragile peace that was starting to slip away. Vireon stood up, moving with purpose. All eyes were on him. He wasn't just another delegate in the room, he was the man responsible for the galaxy's latest crisis. The disaster on Vireon and the crystal-powered trade portals going out of control had put him in the spotlight. Now, in this meeting, Vireon held the attention of everyone, like a star's gravity pulling everything toward it. He scanned the room before focusing on the representatives from Earth. He looked at them like they were reckless children playing with fire, unaware of the damage they could cause. He knew they were key to solving the crisis, but they needed to be handled carefully. "It's time to talk about Earth." Vireon's voice was sharp and direct, slicing through the quiet room. Everyone stopped speaking and listened. "Their carelessness," he continued, his tone steady but dangerous, "has put the entire galaxy at risk. If we let this young and reckless race continue down their current path, we will all suffer." He paused, letting his words sink in. The room was silent. Vireon leaned forward, lowering his voice as he spoke. "Imagine a galaxy free from their chaos. Imagine restoring Earth to its natural state, without its destructive people. Wouldn't that be the best service we could offer to the universe?" The room shifted uneasily. Some delegates avoided his gaze, unwilling to admit that they agreed. Others nodded quietly, keeping their thoughts hidden behind polite expressions. The idea of a cleansed Earth had always been tempting to those who believed they were the guardians of the galaxy's order. Vireon smiled inwardly as he spoke again. We must remember what's at stake, the future of the galaxy. If we act now, we can preserve the stability we have worked so hard to create. We can offer peace and prosperity. But underneath his calm words, there was a darker ambition. Vireon wasn't just trying to fix the current crisis. He saw an opportunity to reshape the entire galaxy to fit his vision. What he was offering wasn't just a solution, it was a chance to remake civilization. The delegates shifted in their seats, torn between fear and fascination. In that moment, it became clear that Vireon wasn't just addressing the crisis, he was setting the stage for something far more drastic. And many in the room were starting to see it. Part 8. The Final Gamble. Vireon paced in his quarters, the walls bathed in the soft glow of holographic projections. In front of him hovered an image of Vireon, its ever-changing surface reflecting in his troubled eyes. The planet was both his greatest success and his looming failure. The collapsing portals weren't just accidents. Deep down, he knew it was his fault. Vireon, you've always been unpredictable, Vireon muttered, his voice barely audible in the silence. The planet, once a source of boundless potential, was now a ticking time bomb. His decisions had led to this moment, and now the galaxy was teetering on the edge of disaster. As he thought about his next move, the pressure weighed heavily on him. The trade portals, powered by Vireon's crystals, were becoming dangerously unstable. They weren't just malfunctioning, they were tearing apart the galaxy's trade system. But the real problem was much deeper than faulty technology. Vireon itself, a living entity, had woken up. Its consciousness was aware, and Vireon knew that if he didn't act fast, the consequences would be far worse than he could imagine. He needed more than just a technical solution. He had to make a deal with the planet. But how do you negotiate with a living world, a planet whose essence you've exploited for years? Time to call in some old favors, Vireon murmured, a faint smile appearing as he thought of Terran, an old friend and smuggler. Terran had a knack for getting through impossible situations, and this was exactly the kind of challenge that he thrived on. The plan was risky and reckless, but that's why Terran would be perfect. Vireon needed one more shipment of crystals from Vireon to stabilize the portals, but more than that, he had to convince the planet it would be the last time. No more exploitation. No more taking without giving back. If this works, Vireon said to himself, pacing back and forth, those Earth activists can protest in another galaxy. The operation had to be flawless. Vireon assembled a team of adventurers, people who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Terran, as always, would be the key to pulling it off. He trusted Terran more than anyone else. When the holocom buzzed to life, Terran's grizzled face appeared on the screen, his trademark grin still intact. Vireon, you old dog, Terran chuckled. What kind of mess have you gotten us into this time? Vireon laughed, his tone serious but familiar. Terran, this is the big one. The last job. Are you in? Terran's eyes gleamed with excitement. Dangerous and pays well? You know I'm in. Vireon leaned closer to the screen. We're talking about Vireon. One last haul of crystals to stabilize the portals. After this, we either become legends, or we don't make it back. Terran let out a low whistle, his grin never fading. Legends or outlaws, huh? My kind of job. Who's on the team? Vireon pulled up the details on his console. I've got the best crew, people who have no other options. But you... Vireon paused, locking eyes with Terran through the screen. You're the one who's going to make sure this all works. Terran laughed again, the thrill clear in his voice. You've never made things easy, Vireon. All right, count me in. Let's make history. Vireon's smile widened, though his eyes remained cold and calculating. Be careful, Terran. Vireon isn't the same anymore. Azarian, the force within the crystals, is awake. This isn't just about rocks anymore. Terran's expression changed slightly, but his confidence never wavered. I'll handle it. You just make sure we get what we're owed. As the call ended, Vireon leaned back in his chair, his mind already racing with thoughts of the next steps. This was it, their final chance. If Terran succeeded, Vireon could regain control. If not, well, there were always other opportunities in the galaxy for someone like him. Vireon stared at the holographic image of Vireon, its surface glowing with the energy of the crystals beneath. He couldn't shake the feeling that something much bigger was about to happen, something that would change everything. A storm was coming, one that could either lift him to new heights or destroy everything he had built. Part 9. A Dangerous Deal. At the farthest edge of the galaxy, where stars barely flickered in the endless darkness, lay the notorious pirate haven known as Stardust, on the planet Volodymyr. The streets of this lawless world were bathed in neon light, casting eerie glows over shadowed alleys. It was a place built on desperation, where smugglers, fugitives, and adventurers came to make deals, either with credits or the barrel of a blaster. Terran had ruled these streets for years. Volodymyr had shaped him, just as it did every soul who found themselves here. Once a man crushed by debts and a gambling addiction, Terran had learned to survive through cold calculation and manipulation. Every risky deal and dangerous negotiation had transformed him into a master of the underworld, pulling strings like a puppeteer. Now, sitting in the back corner of the Dead Nebula, the most infamous bar in Stardust, Terran studied the encrypted files Vireon had sent. The dim hum of conversation surrounded him, but his attention was focused on the data glowing faintly before him. Vireon's latest offer spun in his mind like a puzzle waiting to be solved. A simple job? With Vireon? Terran snorted, a cynical smirk creeping across his face. That's like jumping into a black hole without a ship. The neon lights cast sharp shadows over his face as he leaned back, fingers absently tracing the rim of his drink. On the table before him lay a case with its encrypted contents, glowing faintly, Vireon's generosity. The credits inside were enough to make anyone hesitate, even a man like Terran who had seen it all. Rebels, labs, and talking crystals? Terran muttered, chuckling darkly. Vireon, you never make things simple. But as he dug deeper into the files, his amusement faded. This wasn't just another job. Negotiating with rebels was dangerous enough. They were driven by ideals, and ideals made people unpredictable. But Vireon wanted more. He needed Terran to secure another shipment of crystals from Vireon and destroy one of the research labs on the way out. Terran's gut told him this was a trap. Vireon never showed all his cards, not unless there was more at play. But the credits, so many credits, were enough to make Terran reconsider his doubts. Vireon itself was also a major risk. The planet was infamous for its deadly storms and treacherous terrain. Stories of giant creatures roaming the crystal valleys, barely visible in the thick fog, kept many would-be explorers far away. Yet, what really troubled Terran wasn't just the danger or the secrets. Vireon had one strange personal request that made everything feel even riskier. He didn't just want crystals, he wanted a specific blue crystal. And not only that, Vireon wanted him to talk to it. Talk to a crystal? Terran muttered in disbelief. Has Vireon lost it? But Vireon wasn't joking. He insisted the crystal was alive. Deliver a message to the crystal, Terran repeated with a bitter laugh. Vireon, what won't I do for a good payday? Yet, beneath the humor, Terran couldn't shake the feeling of unease. This wasn't just another job. There was something far more dangerous going on. To pull it off, Terran needed one man, Cypher. The name alone brought a flood of memories. Cypher wasn't just a scientist. He was a genius, someone whose understanding of physics and space-time was unmatched. His experiments had pushed the boundaries of what the galaxy thought possible. Once, Cypher's work with unstable crystals had almost torn a hole in reality. The authorities had shut him down, calling his research too dangerous, and locked him away in an intergalactic prison. That's why I need him, Terran said to himself. Cypher wasn't just another scientist. He was the only one who could stabilize the crystals, the only one who knew how to control their raw power. Without him, the mission was doomed. Breaking Cypher out of prison wouldn't be easy, but if anyone could pull it off, it was Nova. As Terran drummed his fingers on the case, his mind raced through the risks. The credits were too tempting to turn down, but the danger was higher than anything he had faced before. This was more than just a job. It was a gamble with everything on the line. Part 10. A Dangerous Rescue. The second bottle of whiskey sat empty on the table, yet no clear solution had surfaced in Terran's mind. His thoughts whirled like a storm, each idea crashing into the next, leaving behind only fragments of a plan. Nova, his longtime partner in crime, had always been there in his darkest moments. Their history was deep, they had fought their way through countless dangers, always saving each other from the edge. Their bond wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about trust, and Terran trusted almost no one the way he trusted Nova. Without a word, Nova entered the room, her movements silent and precise. Her dark eyes gleamed with sharp, calculating intensity, a mix of charm and deadly focus that never failed to unsettle and fascinate Terran. She was everything he needed in a partner, someone who could slip into trust as easily as a knife between ribs, and strike at just the right moment. Terran's mind flickered with memories of when their relationship had been something more. Those moments, long buried under the weight of their work, still lingered in quiet corners of his mind. Now, their partnership was strictly professional, but in those silent moments, Terran wondered if she saw their past flicker in his eyes too. Their eyes met as she entered, both of them always evaluating. In many ways, she was his equal. "Nova," Terran began, his voice low, almost a growl. "We've got a problem. Laron's put us in a tight spot, and I need your best work for this one." Nova didn't flinch. She never did. Crossing her arms, she raised an eyebrow. "Laron's always trouble. What's the deal this time?" Terran explained everything, breaking Cypher out of prison, negotiating with the rebels, and the strange request for the blue crystal. As he laid out the details, Nova's expression remained unreadable, her mind already working through the logistics. "Your cold-blooded determination is exactly what we need right now," Terran said, his eyes locking onto hers. She nodded, her face thoughtful. "You really think Cypher can pull this off? Breaking him out won't be easy." Terran leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Cypher's not just a scientist. He's a genius, adaptable, and sharp. He's the only one who can figure out how to stabilize those crystals. Without him, we're sunk." Nova studied him for a moment, then nodded again. She trusted Terran's instincts, they had never failed them. "All right," she said, calm but determined. "Let's get to work." From her bag, Nova pulled a map of the prison, laying it across the table. Her fingers traced the intricate details: airlocks, ventilation systems, blind spots and security. "We'll create a diversion here," she said, pointing. "Cypher will slip through during the chaos. If everything goes smoothly, we'll have him out before they know what happened." Terran frowned. "Your plan is solid, Nova, but blowing up the prison? That's a bit much. We need control, not a massacre." Nova smirked, a glint of mischief in her eyes. "Don't worry, I'm not leveling the place. The explosion will be just enough to make them think Cypher orchestrated his own escape." Terran nodded, though his expression remained serious. "We'll need to plant a tracker on him. And he'll need a heat-resistant suit for the blast. One mistake, and this goes sideways." "I've got that covered," Nova said confidently. "By the time they figure out what's happening, we'll be long gone." Terran smiled. This was why Nova was his most trusted ally. She didn't just execute plans, she perfected them. "Good," he said, leaning back. "But Laron's impatient. We need to move fast." Nova looked him in the eye, her face serious, but with a flicker of something else. "We've done crazier things before, right?" Terran chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah, but this one's going to be close." Part 11. The Path to Freedom. In the dim light of the prison cell, where the cold, blank walls pressed in from every side, Cypher could see only a sliver of the sky through the small, barred window. The stars, once his companions on countless journeys, now seemed distant and unreachable, just like his freedom. Life in this place felt like a never-ending sentence, with no hope of escape. When his lawyer finally arrived, Cypher sensed that this would be no ordinary visit. A spark lit in his eyes when he found a cryptic message hidden in the bland food tray. The path to freedom lies through the skies. Those words, mysterious and full of promise, stirred something deep within him, a hope he had buried beneath layers of bitterness and cynicism. The next day, Cypher was called for a meeting. He could feel a shift, as if the universe had just nudged something into motion. His mind, always sharp, began piecing together a plan. He knew escaping would be risky, but the thought of freedom was enough to push him toward the gamble, even if it meant staking his life. At the spaceport of the intergalactic prison, a cold and bureaucratic hub filled with guards and workers, Ralph, Cypher's lawyer, weaved through the crowd. His disheveled appearance, a stocky man in a worn-out brown suit, stained collar, and a permanent smirk, gave little indication of the sharp mind behind the sloppy facade. He chewed on a cookie, scattering crumbs as he moved, drawing smirks from the guards. Ralph's disheveled look was a clever disguise, one that concealed his true nature, a manipulator who could play both sides of any situation. Beneath the sweat-stained suit was a man who could charm or outwit anyone, depending on the need. Walking with the guards, Ralph kept the conversation light, tossing out casual jokes and anecdotes about his legal career while secretly gauging their reactions. The guards laughed at his stories, unaware of the razor-sharp calculations happening beneath the humor. When one of the officers handed Ralph a cup of water, offering it to ease his cough, Ralph took his chance. He scribbled a message on the cup, as casually as one could in such a setting. The path to freedom lies through the skies. It was a subtle message, but one that Cypher would surely understand. As Ralph approached the meeting room, his easy chatter ceased, replaced by a more serious tone. Cypher wasn't just another client. His life hung by a thread, and Ralph was the one holding the scissors. Inside, Ralph leaned back, pulling a half-eaten cookie from his pocket and taking a bite before speaking. "Cypher, the court's decision is final," he said, almost as if discussing the weather. "They've moved up your execution. Early termination is now on the table." A heavy silence filled the room, pressing down on them both. The only sound was the irritating crunch of Ralph's cookie. Ralph slid a cup of water across the table towards Cypher. On it, written in neat script, was the same cryptic phrase. "The path to freedom lies through the skies." But this time, it wasn't just a metaphor, it was a key. Cypher stared at the cup for a moment, his fingers tracing the words as his mind raced. In the cloudy water, tainted with crumbs, he saw a flicker of hope. At the bottom of the cup, barely visible, was a small tracking device. With a grimace, Cypher swallowed the contents, feeling the device slip down his throat. It was a risk, but it was one he had to take. From this moment on, every step he took would be monitored, every move tracked. It was the beginning of the chaos that would lead to his escape. As the last drop of water disappeared, Cypher set the cup down and locked eyes with Ralph. No words were needed, they both understood what was at stake. For now, the prison held him, but Cypher knew that his freedom was within reach. Part 12: The Great Escape. The assault on the prison was timed with perfect precision. As the sun set behind the barren hills, casting long shadows over the facility, a fleet of drones descended from the sky like silent messengers of destruction. Their sleek metallic bodies reflected the fading light, but their purpose was far from beautiful. Each drone carried enough firepower to obliterate solid stone. The first explosion struck like a thunderclap, shaking the prison to its core. In his dark cell, Cypher felt the tremors reverberate through the walls. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling, and the air thickened with the sharp scent of smoke and burning metal. Other drones infiltrated through the sewage systems, their approach unseen until it was too late. Explosions echoed in quick succession, as if part of a deadly symphony, each blast designed to weaken the prison's structure from the inside. The stench of sewage mixed with sulfur, intensifying as fires broke out across multiple corridors. Cypher stood in his cell, mind racing. Every escape route he had meticulously planned was falling apart. He needed to act fast. He grabbed the heat-resistant suit that Ralph had smuggled in for him, quickly pulling it on and feeling the reassuring hum of the life support systems activate. The suit hugged his body, its advanced tech designed to withstand the heat and debris. As he secured his helmet, the ground shook again. A massive metal arm, part of an emergency demolition robot, tore through the wall of his cell, ripping apart concrete and steel like paper. The cell door crumbled into rubble, creating an opening that led into the chaos beyond. "This is it," Cypher whispered, his heart pounding, but as the flames crept closer and the debris piled higher, doubt started to creep in. The plan had seemed foolproof, but now, with everything collapsing around him, it all felt so fragile. Nova's voice crackled through his helmet, sharp and commanding. "Cypher, no time for second-guessing. Move now!" Her command jolted him back to focus. His muscles responded automatically, pushing him through the gaping hole in the wall. The roar of flames and crumbling debris echoed in his ears, but Cypher's focus was singular: survival. Climbing over wreckage, he launched himself into the corridor outside. It was no better, it had turned into a battlefield. Drones hovered above like deadly insects, while guards, blindsided by the attack, scrambled to restore order. Fires erupted in every direction, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Cypher's helmet beeped in warning. His oxygen levels were dropping fast. The suit was buying him time, but not much. He had minutes, maybe less, before the inferno consumed him. A blast shook the hallway to his left, throwing Cypher hard against the wall. Pain shot through his body, but there was no time to stop. The explosion had destroyed part of the ceiling, sending chunks of concrete and steel crashing down, sealing off his only way back. "Nova! Terran!" Cypher gasped into his comm, struggling to his feet. "I'm trapped! The exit's blocked!" Nova's voice came through again, more urgent this time. "Keep moving forward! The evac platform is just ahead! We've got your location, don't stop for anything!" With renewed determination, Cypher pushed on, dodging debris and stumbling over fallen drones. His body ached, but his mind remained sharp, calculating every move. The mission couldn't fail now. As Cypher rounded the corner, he saw it, the escape platform. A small opening at the end of the hallway, illuminated by the fiery wreckage of the facility. It was his only way out. But standing between him and the platform were two guards, their weapons drawn, panic etched across their faces as they struggled to comprehend the chaos around them. "Cypher!" Nova's voice came through faintly, her tone quiet yet firm. "They won't hesitate. You know what to do." Cypher's heart raced. The guards looked ready to fire at any second. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him, but there was no time for hesitation, only action. With his fists clenched inside the suit, Cypher took a deep breath and sprinted forward. The world blurred around him, smoke, fire, debris. As he closed the distance, a massive piece of ceiling suddenly gave way, crashing down on top of one guard. The man didn't even have time to scream before being crushed by the falling rubble. The second guard spun around, weapon raised, hands shaking. Cypher's instincts kicked in. His eyes darted to a broken brick lying on the ground. Without hesitation, Cypher grabbed the brick and, in one swift motion, brought it down on the guard's head. The man collapsed to the floor, his weapon clattering beside him. Cypher's breath came in short, ragged gasps, but there was no time to think. With the final obstacle behind him, Cypher ran toward the escape platform. The roar of engines filled the air, the vibrations of the ship's power thrumming beneath him. Just as he reached it, the hatch opened, welcoming him into the craft. Cypher collapsed inside, every muscle in his body screaming in exhaustion. Nova's voice crackled back into his ear, calm and steady this time. "Welcome back, Cypher. You made it." As the ship pulled away from the burning wreckage of the prison, Cypher slumped in his seat, heart pounding. He was battered, bruised, but alive. Part 13. The Fall of a Hero. The news of the prison disaster didn't just cause a ripple across the galaxy, it hit like a supernova, igniting every communication channel and dark corner of the black market. Cypher's name, once whispered in certain circles, now blazed across every holoscreen. His escape, forged in fire and destruction, had turned him into a symbol of chaos. Footage of the shattered prison, the towering flames, and the countless dead flooded the galaxy, painting Cypher as the harbinger of disaster. Every holoscreen flashed the latest headlines, each one more sensational than the last. Massive prison break, hundreds dead, Cypher to blame, one read. Another screamed. Most wanted, Cypher, the galaxy's greatest threat. Shock swept through the galaxy, and in its search for a villain, it found one in Cypher. And watching it all unfold from the shadows, Nova couldn't help but smile. This was all part of her plan. While Cypher's escape made him infamous, she had turned his notoriety into a carefully orchestrated media storm. She wasted no time launching a campaign to frame him not just as a criminal, but as the galaxy's deadliest enemy. Every broadcast, every whisper painted Cypher as the one responsible for tearing apart intergalactic peace. Cypher is a threat to the very fabric of our galaxy, Nova declared on major networks, her face appearing on holoscreens across countless systems. He is a man driven by ambition, ready to destroy worlds for his own gain. If he isn't stopped, no planet will be safe. But Nova's campaign didn't stop at mere words. Behind the scenes, her AI generated fake videos and doctored reports that spread like wildfire across the galaxy. In one video, Cypher was shown leading an army of drones in an attack on an innocent colony. In another, he was seen making secret deals with criminal syndicates. None of it was true, but that didn't matter. The galaxy craved a villain, and Nova had delivered one. Every comm channel was flooded with messages of fear and outrage. Cypher is a madman. He's going to destroy us all. The narrative spun out of control, and even those who had never heard of Cypher before now saw him as the embodiment of evil. His reputation was shattered, and Cypher, still grappling with the fallout from his escape, had no idea the extent of the storm brewing around him. Back at the smuggler's base, Nova was relentless in refining Cypher's legend. Her goal wasn't just to ruin his name, she wanted to make him the most feared villain in the galaxy. By controlling the narrative, she could manipulate the galaxy's response, and more importantly, grow her own power. Nova's speeches echoed across the stars. "I've established a relief fund for the victims of Cypher's attacks," she announced, her voice filled with false sympathy and conviction. But behind her caring facade, her true intentions boiled beneath the surface. Every credit that flowed into her so-called relief fund only strengthened her influence and empire. The angrier the galaxy grew towards Cypher, the more powerful Nova became. While Cypher fought for his survival, he remained unaware that a web of lies had been woven around him. His name, once a symbol of rebellion and hope, had been twisted into something far darker. In the eyes of the galaxy, Cypher was no longer a hero. He had become the monster they feared. Part 14. The Price of Survival. At the heart of the smuggler's base, where shadows masked secrets and whispers carried power, Terran greeted Cypher with his signature grin. Wide and warm as always, the smile still didn't hide the tension beneath it. Cypher could sense the shift. His bounty was growing by the hour, and Terran, ever the opportunist, wouldn't ignore such a lucrative chance. Despite the rising price on Cypher's head, their bond ran deeper than money. It was built on years of shared battles, close calls, and unspoken loyalty. To Terran, Cypher was more than just a fugitive. He was family, or at least as close as one could be in a galaxy where trust was a rare commodity. "Cypher, I saved you because you're like a son to me," Terran began, his voice casual but laced with genuine emotion. He leaned back, eyes glinting with nostalgia. "I remember when you were just a kid, hiding under my desk, trying to dodge capture." Cypher chuckled, though the humor didn't quite reach his eyes. "You never miss a chance to spin your tales, do you, Terran?" His smile faded, his gaze hardening as it met Terran's. "But I'm not that kid anymore. I see through your games. So drop the father act and tell me what you really want." For a split second, Terran's smile faltered, but it quickly returned. All right. You're free to go, Cypher. Go grab a drink on me. We'll talk later." Cypher gave him a wary look but said nothing, heading into the bustling chaos of the smuggler's den. The bar was exactly as he remembered, dark, loud, and teeming with rough characters. Deals were made in whispers, and trust was as fragile as glass. Cypher barely stepped through the door before a fist slammed into his gut, doubling him over. Gasping for air, he caught sight of a bottle flying through the air, shattering against a nearby patron's skull. Suddenly, the entire bar erupted into chaos. Punches were thrown, chairs crashed to the floor, and curses filled the air. Cypher's instincts took over. He vaulted over the bar and crouched behind the counter, scanning the floor for anything he could use. Amidst the noise, he overheard snatches of conversation. "Who's gonna grab the bounty on Cypher?" Someone sneered. "I'll take him down myself," another voice shouted. Cypher's heart raced. This wasn't just a bar fight anymore, it was a hunt, and he was the target. His hand found a broken chair leg. Not much, but better than nothing. Just as he braced himself to defend against the incoming threat, the crowd parted. Standing at the center was Terran, his presence enough to halt the chaos, at least momentarily. With a knowing grin, Terran approached and offered Cypher a hand, pulling him out of the fray. "You see, Cypher, you're not just some wanderer anymore. You're a legend now, and legends carry a heavy burden." Cypher wiped the sweat from his brow and glared at him. "I never asked to be a legend. I just want to survive." Terran's grin widened. "Oh, I know. But survival has a price. You can run, but the hunt won't ever stop. Or," his voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, "you can take on one little job for me. Do it, and I'll make sure you disappear, for good." Cypher stared at him, weighing his options. He didn't fully trust Terran, but the man was right about one thing: the bounty wouldn't go away. As long as Nova's lies spread, there would always be someone hunting him down. "What's the job?" Cypher asked, his voice low but firm. Terran's eyes gleamed with victory. "Vireon. There's something valuable I need retrieved. Do this for me, and you'll have enough credits and cover to vanish, forever." Cypher sighed. It wasn't like he had much of a choice. His freedom was just another deal, and in this galaxy, deals were the only currency that mattered. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll do it. But after this, I'm done. I don't owe you or anyone else anything." Terran's smile remained steady. "I wouldn't expect anything less from you, Cypher." Part 15. Into the heart of Vireon. After days of travel through hyperspace, the ship carrying Cypher, Terran, and Nova finally arrived near Vireon. The planet loomed ahead, a swirling mass of strange, shifting colors, alive with an unsettling energy. Its atmosphere seemed to pulse, both inviting and warning them at the same time. "It's just like the stories," Nova murmured as she stared through the viewport, her eyes reflecting the kaleidoscope of colors in Vireon's atmosphere. The planet was beautiful, almost surreal in its vibrant hues. "Yeah, it looks nice," Terran said, though his tone betrayed none of the comfort his words intended. He turned to Cypher, his voice more serious. "But don't be fooled. Vireon's a living trap. One wrong move, and it'll swallow you whole." Cypher nodded, already calculating his next steps. This wasn't just another mission. Vireon was the heart of the rebellion against Laron, and the stakes were higher than ever. Cypher had his cover as an escaped Earth fugitive, famed across the galaxy, and his name alone would win over the rebels. The plan Laron had hatched was both clever and insidious: to infiltrate the resistance, lead it from within, and steer them straight to their doom. As the ship descended, Terran handed Cypher a small metallic case. Cold to the touch, its weight felt unnerving in Cypher's hands. "This is everything you need," Terran said in a low voice, his eyes scanning Cypher's face. "Stick to the plan, and they'll never suspect a thing. But veer off course, and, well, you know what Laron's capable of." Cypher took the case without a word, but a familiar unease gnawed at him. Terran wasn't telling him everything. This mission was supposed to be straightforward: play the part of a hero to the rebels and guide them to Laron's trap. But the deeper they ventured into this world, the more Cypher sensed that something was off. The ship touched down on the surface with a soft thud, the unnatural energy of the planet crackling in the air around them. The base they arrived at stood tall like a fortress, its spires piercing the sky as if warding off any threat from above. It was clear that the builders had anticipated danger. Thick walls and automated turrets lined the perimeter, and the tension in the air was palpable. As they disembarked, Cypher couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The planet felt alive, almost aware of their presence. Every step seemed amplified in the quiet emptiness. "Do you feel that?" Nova whispered, her hand resting on her blaster. "This place gives me the creeps." "Vireon's alive," Cypher muttered. "It's not just the atmosphere. There's something deeper here." Terran shot a glance back at them, smirking. "Just stick to the mission, both of you. We're not here to make friends with the planet." They moved deeper into the base, the metallic doors hissing open to reveal dimly lit corridors. The walls were lined with advanced technology, focused on scanning and studying the planet's surface. This wasn't just a research facility, it was a command center for control, a hub where Laron's grasp over Vireon tightened with each passing day. Soon they were met by Darren Fane, one of the key leaders of the rebellion. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man, his eyes sharp and calculating. His weathered face and the lines of exhaustion around his eyes showed a man worn by the years of resistance against Laron. But his posture spoke of someone who refused to be broken. "Cypher," Fane said, his voice both welcoming and guarded as he shook Cypher's hand. "It's good to finally meet you. We've heard stories. How you escaped prison, how you've been fighting back ever since. You're a symbol to many of us." Cypher met his gaze, playing his part with ease. "I'm just a man who got lucky. But if we're going to take Laron down, we'll need more than luck. We'll need unity." Fane nodded, his eyes searching Cypher's for any signs of deceit. "You're right. But we've had complications." "Complications?" Cypher asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew what was coming. "Yes. Laron's operations on Vireon have stirred up more than just crystals. The deeper we dig, the more unstable the planet becomes. And the creatures, Vireon's native fauna, they're reacting violently to our mining efforts." Nova, always sharp, narrowed her eyes. "Native creatures?" Fane gestured to a nearby console, pulling up a holographic display. Images of massive, insect-like creatures filled the air, their bodies bristling with jagged spines, their mandibles large enough to crush steel. "We call them ferroquil. They're drawn to the crystals, and every time we get close to a significant deposit, they attack. We've lost people." Terran, ever the opportunist, leaned in slightly. "And what's the payout for dealing with these complications?" Fane's face hardened. "This isn't about payouts, Terran. This is about survival. Laron's grip tightens every day, and if we don't act soon, he'll crush us all. You're here because we need experts. People who can handle the crystals and keep the planet from turning on us." Cypher's instincts screamed at him to turn back. He could feel the weight of his cover. He was here as their supposed savior, but the truth was, he was their doom. The only reason they trusted him was because of his reputation, built carefully through Laron's manipulation. The rebels had no idea that their new leader had already sealed their fate. "All right," Cypher said, his voice calm and steady. "Let's get to work." As they headed deeper into the facility, Cypher couldn't shake the feeling that the rebellion was standing on the edge of a precipice, and he was the one who would push them over. Part 16. A Moment of Truth. The planet's atmosphere was crackling with tension, the air filled with the charged energy of Vireon's strange, hostile environment. As the crew made their way through the jagged crystal landscape, the storm that had been brewing in the distance suddenly struck. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by a deafening roar as the ground beneath them trembled. Terran, Nova, and Cypher moved quickly, dodging falling debris, but the storm was relentless. The winds howled, carrying sharp shards of crystal that slashed through their protective suits. The landscape became a blur of chaos. "Stay close!" Terran shouted over the roar of the storm, his voice barely audible as they navigated the treacherous terrain. But suddenly, Nova slipped on a loose stone and fell. A chunk of crystal broke loose above her, hurtling toward her at terrifying speed. She tried to scramble to her feet, but the ground beneath her shifted again, trapping her leg under a heavy shard of crystal. "Terran!" she screamed, panic seeping into her voice. The storm raged around her, and in that moment she knew she wouldn't make it out alive if no one reached her. Without a second thought, Terran darted toward her, his eyes wide with fear as the massive crystal hurtled closer. He reached her just in time, throwing himself over her body and pulling her out from under the crystal's path. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground, and they were both thrown to the side by the force of it. Panting and covered in dust, Terran struggled to his feet, his arms wrapped tightly around Nova. She coughed, trying to catch her breath, her eyes wide as she realized what had just happened. You saved me," she whispered, her voice shaky with disbelief. Her heart pounded in her chest as she looked up at him, the storm raging around them, but all she could focus on was him. Terran's face was inches from hers, his breath ragged. "Of course I did," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. He pulled her to her feet, steadying her as the world around them spun. "I wasn't about to lose you, Nova. Not like this." For a moment, the chaos of the storm seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them standing together in the aftermath of what could have been her last breath. The fear, the adrenaline, the relief, it all surged between them, and suddenly, the unspoken feelings that had been lingering for so long came to the surface. Nova's eyes searched his, and for the first time she saw the depth of his feelings, his fear of losing her, his unwavering loyalty. And in that moment, something shifted inside her. Terran wasn't just a partner anymore. He was someone she couldn't imagine her life without. I don't know what to say," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the wind. "You don't have to say anything," Terran replied, his voice soft yet filled with emotion. He cupped her face gently, his touch warm despite the cold storm surrounding them. "Just know I'll always be there. Whatever happens." Nova's heart raced, the vulnerability of the moment washing over her. The fierce, guarded warrior who had always kept her emotions in check finally let the walls come down. Without thinking, she leaned in, her lips brushing against his, a kiss filled with gratitude, relief, and something deeper. Terran's grip on her tightened as he kissed her back, the connection between them solidified in that instant. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something they had both been afraid to admit for too long. When they finally pulled away, Nova's forehead rested against his, her breath shaky. "I've always kept myself guarded," she admitted softly. "But I don't want to do that with you anymore." Terran smiled, a small, tender smile that made Nova's heart ache. "Then don't. Whatever happens, we face it together." But before they could savor the moment, the storm raged again, snapping them back to reality. The wind howled, and a message crackled through their comms. Cypher's voice came through, sharp and urgent. "We're running out of time. I've made it to the lab. Get back here now!" Nova blinked, her mind snapping to the mission at hand. She steadied herself, though the warmth of Terran's touch still lingered on her skin. She nodded to him, their unspoken connection stronger than ever. "Let's go." As they made their way back to the ship, the danger of Vireon still swirling around them, Nova knew that something had changed between them. They weren't just partners anymore. They had crossed a line, into something deeper, something they both knew would last, no matter what the galaxy threw their way. Part 17, The Crystal's Call. Vireon's research base buzzed with frenetic energy, but for Cypher, the hum of activity grounded him. Amid the chaos of resistance fighters and the flood of data, he felt more at home than he ever had in the cold vacuum of space or the lawless smuggler dens. Surrounded by cosmic minerals and scientific curiosity, Cypher had found his purpose. The war wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about something bigger. His transformation within the resistance had been remarkable. No longer just a fugitive with a bounty on his head, Cypher had earned respect. His quick thinking, knack for strategy, and adaptability made him indispensable. He wasn't just a survivor, he was a leader, and people listened when he spoke. "Cypher, you've been a game-changer," said Arlen, one of the resistance leaders, clapping him on the back after yet another successful strategy session. "We couldn't have made it this far without you." But Cypher knew better than to bask in the praise. He had long ago learned that trust in the galaxy was as fragile as stardust. One wrong move, and everything could crumble. Yet, for the first time in years, he felt a sense of belonging and purpose that stretched beyond just staying alive. Over the following days, Cypher worked tirelessly, perfecting a bold plan that could tip the scales of the rebellion. The crystals they had mined from Vireon were not just rare minerals. They were a treasure trove of power waiting to be unleashed. "These aren't just minerals," Cypher said confidently during a meeting with the resistance leaders. He projected a holographic map, lighting up various key systems. "These crystals are our ticket into the galactic trade network. If we strike the right deals, we'll have access to funding, supplies, everything we need to win this war." The room buzzed with excitement as Cypher outlined his vision. He could see it in their eyes. They trusted him, and more importantly, they believed in the future he was offering. But as always, nothing on Vireon was simple. A storm, unlike any they had seen before, hit without warning. The winds howled, shaking the base's foundations, while arcs of electrical energy snapped through the air, shorting circuits and sending sparks flying. The entire facility trembled, its systems failing one by one under the storm's assault. In the control room, Terran and Nova stood frozen, watching in horror as the security feeds blinked out one by one, leaving them nearly blind. Holographic displays flickered, casting eerie, fragmented light across their faces. The storm was tearing the planet apart. "What the hell is happening down there?" growled Terran, his usual cocky grin replaced by a grim expression of fear. Meanwhile, deep within the crumbling research facility, Cypher moved like a shadow, weaving through the failing infrastructure. The walls groaned, and cracks snaked across the floors as the storm outside raged, unleashing waves of energy that made the air hum with electricity. Sparks erupted from overhead lights, and the scent of burning electronics filled the air. Then, out of nowhere, a deep, guttural roar echoed through the halls, vibrating through the very bones of the station. Cypher's heart raced as he pressed himself against the wall, listening. "I know that sound," he muttered under his breath. He had heard it before, in the caves, during the mining operations. It was something ancient, something angry. The lab doors loomed ahead, their locks fried by the storm. Cypher didn't waste any time. Grabbing a steel pipe, he slammed it against the reinforced glass, watching as it spiderwebbed with cracks. Another hit. Then another. Finally, with a deafening crash, the doors shattered, sending shards of glass raining to the floor. The lab was dark, lit only by the flickering glow of emergency lights. In the center of the room, surrounded by debris and toppled equipment, was the blue crystal. It pulsed softly, as if alive, its rhythm matching the chaotic storm outside. Cypher's breath caught in his throat as he approached. The crystal called to him, its glow growing brighter as he drew near. He had no doubt now, this was no ordinary mineral. It was alive, connected to the planet itself. This was why Vireon was reacting so violently. "What the hell are you?" Cypher whispered, his fingers hovering over the glowing stone. Before he could touch it, Nova's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Cypher, be careful. We don't know what that thing is capable of." Suddenly, the creature Nova had warned him about was close. Cypher could feel its presence in the air, hear its heavy breaths echoing down the corridors. A massive shadow darted in front of him, its glowing eyes locking onto Cypher as it stalked forward. There was no time to think. Cypher grabbed the crystal, feeling its energy surge through his body. He ran, his heart pounding, pushing himself to the limit as he bolted for the exit. The creature roared behind him, its sound reverberating through the collapsing facility. Cypher didn't look back. He sprinted toward the surface, the weight of the crystal in his pack urging him forward. Just as he neared the hangar, the ground split open, and he tumbled into a lower chamber. The impact knocked the air from his lungs, but Cypher forced himself up, his body bruised and bleeding. The crystal pulsed brighter than ever, its light filling the chamber. The creature loomed above him, massive and terrifying, its claws scraping against the stone as it prepared to strike. Suddenly, the crystal flared to life, its light so blinding that Cypher had to shield his eyes. When he looked again, the creature had frozen in place, its glowing eyes locked onto the crystal with a strange reverence. What just happened?" Cypher muttered, watching as the beast slowly backed away, retreating into the shadows. Before he could process what had just occurred, Nova's voice crackled through the calms again. "Cypher, where the hell are you? The base is falling apart." "I'm on my way," Cypher replied, his voice shaky. The crystal had saved him. Whatever it was far more than just a mineral. Part 18. Azarian's Hold. The storm outside had only gotten worse. By the time Cypher reached the hangar, the entire base was on the brink of collapse. Towers of smoke and fire rose into the air, and the sound of explosions echoed through the chaos. "Nova, I'm almost at the hangar," Cypher shouted into his comms, fighting against the howling wind as he sprinted toward the ship. His body ached, but the weight of the crystal in his pack kept him moving. He didn't know how much time they had left. Nova and Terran were already aboard the ship, engines roaring as they prepared for takeoff. The moment Cypher reached the ramp, Nova pulled him aboard, slamming the hatch shut as they lifted off. "What the hell happened down there?" Terran demanded, his voice thick with panic as the ship shook under the force of the storm. Cypher collapsed into a seat, gasping for breath. The crystal pulsed faintly from his pack, and for a moment, he wasn't sure how to explain what had just happened. "The planet, it's alive," Cypher managed, his voice hoarse. "And it's not going to let us leave." Nova's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Before Cypher could respond, the ship lurched violently, sending everyone tumbling as alarms blared across the cockpit. "What the?" Terran cursed, gripping the controls as the ship was jerked back toward the planet's surface. "We're caught in something!" A massive energy field had erupted from the planet, wrapping itself around the ship like a claw. The storm raged, and the ship's systems began to fail one by one. "It's the crystal," Cypher realized, his eyes locking on the pulsing blue light. "It's connected to the planet. It's not letting us leave." Suddenly, the crystal's glow intensified, its light blinding. The entire cabin was filled with the ethereal glow, and for a moment, everything froze. Before them, Azarian took form, a humanoid figure of shimmering light and power, his presence commanding the space around them. His voice, deep and resonant, cut through the chaos with chilling calm. "I am Azarian," he declared, his eyes gleaming with ancient knowledge. "And Vireon will not let you go." The storm outside intensified, as if mirroring the force of Azarian's presence. Part 19. The Truth of Azarian. The small ship drifted through space, the remnants of the storm left far behind on Vireon. Inside the cockpit, the tension lingered, yet there was an odd sense of peace settling over the crew. Cypher leaned back in his seat, his mind still racing with the events that had unfolded. Across from him, Azarian, no longer just a crystal but a being of shimmering light and consciousness, sat silently, his glowing form almost blending into the soft hum of the ship. Cypher shot a glance toward Azarian, who appeared lost in thought, but he couldn't resist asking the question that had been gnawing at him. "So, who are you really, Azarian? I mean, I know you're more than just some sentient rock," Cypher finally said, breaking the silence. Azarian's light pulsed gently, as if amused. "Ah, the curiosity of mortals. Always asking the same question." He paused, his voice softening. "But it's a fair question. What happened to me after meeting Laron was like waking from an eternal slumber. I am not just a stone, Cypher. I am the heart of Vireon, its soul, its history, its memory." Azarian's voice carried a note of sorrow as he continued. "Laron's betrayal cut deep. Our conversations woke something within me, something that had been dormant for millennia. But that awakening came with pain. Pain I never knew existed, for how could a stone feel pain until it had consciousness?" Cypher raised an eyebrow, intrigued by Azarian's revelation. A sentient planet, with a history as old as the stars themselves? It was a lot to take in. "And now?" Cypher asked, leaning forward slightly. "What happens when you meet Laron again? What's the plan?" Azarian's form flickered, and a chill ran through the room. "The plan is simple. I could destroy everything, Cypher. Every shard of crystal that was mined from my planet is connected to me. With a single thought, I could bring it all crumbling down. That's not exactly reassuring, Cypher replied, shifting uncomfortably. You're starting to sound like a villain in a galactic soap opera. Azarian let out a low, rumbling laugh, his glow dimming slightly. Relax, Cypher. I have no intention of destroying the galaxy. Not yet, anyway. His tone became serious again. But I will make Vireon pay. And you're part of that plan. Cypher chuckled nervously, unsure whether to take Azarian's words as a threat or a compliment. Well, at least you have a sense of humor. Azarian's form shimmered once more, his eyes gleaming with something that resembled amusement. You'll find that even gods can enjoy a good laugh, Cypher. But enough banter. We have work to do. The weight of their task settled between them, but Cypher knew now that the stakes were much higher than he had ever imagined. The fate of the galaxy, and Vireon's inevitable reckoning, was in their hands. Part 20. The Space Station. Their ship wasn't built for long-haul journeys through space, and by the time they neared the station near Vireon, the entire crew, Cypher, Nova, Terran, and Azarian, were eager for solid ground. The docking procedure, however, didn't go as smoothly as expected. As Cypher took the helm, he approached the station with a bit too much confidence. The result? The side of the ship scraped painfully against the docking bay, leaving behind deep grooves and dents along the hull. The ship jolted, sending everyone inside bracing themselves. Nice landing, Ace? Nova muttered sarcastically, steadying herself as the ship lurched one final time. Cypher's face flushed. It's called creative docking, thank you very much. Probably not in the textbooks yet. Azarian, now comfortable in his humanoid form, shimmered from his seat. Creative indeed. If creativity is the art of turning ships into scrap metal. Cypher shot Azarian a look, though there was a smirk on his face. You know, for someone who used to be a rock, you've developed quite the sense of humor. Once they managed to dock, the crew stepped out onto the bustling interplanetary station. The place felt like a galactic marketplace at rush hour. Crowds of beings from across the cosmos moved through the station in waves, and the hum of activity filled the air. Robots and androids zipped around, tending to the station's needs with practiced efficiency. It was a vibrant, chaotic place where every race and creed in the galaxy seemed to converge. The group maneuvered through the winding corridors, passing vendors hawking their wares, alien merchants shouting over one another, and bounty hunters scanning the crowd with suspicious eyes. It was a far cry from the deadly quiet of Vireon, and Cypher found himself oddly comforted by the noise. As they moved through the bustling crowds, Cypher cast a glance at Azarian, whose form flickered with light. Although he had toned down his glow, Azarian's presence still turned a few curious heads. You're going to need to tone that down a little more if we want to blend in, Cypher whispered. I'm doing my best, Azarian responded dryly. For someone who used to be an immobile crystal, I think I'm adjusting quite well. Nova stifled a grin, nudging Terran as they passed a cluster of traders, some of whom were eyeing the group suspiciously. Focus, she muttered under her breath. We need to get to the upper levels without drawing any more attention. Their plan was simple: make their way to the upper level of the station, where they could access the terminal leading to Vireon's current whereabouts. The information was scarce, but Azarian had felt a connection through his scattered crystals and knew that Vireon was nearby. The only problem was getting there without raising alarms. Terran, scanning the station's map, pointed towards an elevator ahead. That's our ticket up. Should take us directly to the next level. Great, Cypher said, eyes flicking around nervously. The sooner we get out of here, the better. As they approached the elevator, the station suddenly shuddered, and an alarm blared overhead. A voice crackled through the speakers, warning of an approaching meteor storm. Cypher and the others froze, tension rippling through the crowd as everyone around them began to panic. Well, this is just perfect. What kind of day is this? Wherever I am, there's always a disaster, Nova muttered, rolling her eyes as people started rushing toward the nearest exits. Stay calm, Cypher urged. Let's get away from this station to another planet as quickly as possible. No, you won't make it in time, Azarian interrupted, his voice low and controlled. His eyes, glowing with a faint blue light, flickered as he connected with the energy field surrounding the station. The storm's stronger than the shields can handle. If we don't reinforce them soon, the whole station will be wiped out. Just look, I'm the best smuggler in the galaxy, and now I'm taking part in a rescue operation, Terran said sarcastically. We need to get to the command center now, Cypher said, already turning toward the stairs. If the Zarian can do something about the shields, we might have a chance to save everyone. The group moved quickly, weaving through the chaos as people tried to evacuate. Cypher led the way, while Azarian concentrated on the shield's status, sensing the weakness in its structure. As they neared the command center, Cypher turned to Azarian. Once we get in there, can you directly link to the shield systems? Azarian nodded. I'm already connected to the station's energy. Once inside, I can strengthen the shields enough to hold off the meteors. Let's hope it works, Nova said as they reached the door. Otherwise, this place is going to be dust in minutes. Part 21. Azarian's Power Unleashed. The command center was a flurry of activity. Alarms blared, and the screens displayed terrifying images of the incoming meteor storm. Engineers and technicians worked frantically to manage the defenses, but their efforts were clearly falling short. Griffin Darkwood, the station commander, stood at the center of the chaos, barking orders. His face twisted with frustration as he struggled to maintain control. Why aren't the shields holding? Get those systems back online, he yelled, but his voice was drowned out by the noise. Just as Cypher, Nova, Terran, and Azarian burst into the room, Darkwood turned toward them, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. Who are you? What are you doing in here? We're here to help, Cypher replied, keeping his voice steady despite the chaos. Your shields are failing. Let us assist. Assist? Darkwood scoffed, eyeing Azarian with suspicion. And who the hell is that glowing thing? No time for questions, Cypher shot back. If we don't act now, this station will be destroyed. Azarian can stabilize the shields. He's connected to the energy flow of this place. Darkwood hesitated for a moment, his gaze flickering between Cypher and the monitors showing the incoming meteors. Fine, he growled. But if this thing of yours makes it worse, you'll answer to me. Azarian stepped forward without a word, his form glowing brighter as he approached the control console. He raised his hand, and the room seemed to hold its breath as the lights flickered. Within seconds, the shield system began to respond, its energy growing stronger as Azarian poured his power into it. The station trembled as another wave of meteors hit, but this time, the shields held. The energy field around the station glowed brighter, absorbing the impact and disintegrating the smaller meteors before they could cause damage. Darkwood's expression shifted from anger to awe as he watched the shields strengthen. What? What is this? He muttered. Azarian is reinforcing the shields. Cypher explained, relief washing over him. He's part of Vireon. He can control the energy of the crystals. For a brief moment, the chaos in the room quieted. The meteors continued to crash against the reinforced shields, but the station held firm. But Darkwood wasn't content to let things go so easily. His eyes narrowed once again as he turned towards Cypher and Azarian. You may have saved us from the meteors, but that doesn't mean you're free to walk away. Guards! Before anyone could react, a squad of heavily armed guards stormed into the room, weapons drawn and pointed directly at the group. One of the guards fired. Azarian's form flickered with bright light as his patience wore thin. Is this your gratitude, human? You think you can just come here and take control? Darkwood sneered. I run the station. Arrest them. Nova reached for her blaster, but before she could fire, Azarian raised his hand. A blinding flash of light filled the room, and in an instant, the guards were thrown back by a shockwave of energy. They crashed into the walls, unconscious before they hit the ground. Cypher, stunned by the sudden show of power, barely had time to react as Azarian turned to him. We need to leave. Now. They bolted for the exit, leaving Darkwood shouting angrily behind them. Evacuation alarms blared throughout the station, and people were already scrambling toward the hangars. Cypher, Nova, Terran, and Azarian slipped through the chaos, making their way to one of the departing ships. "Where to now?" Nova asked, catching her breath. Azarian turned his gaze to the stars beyond. "To Galaxara. That's where we'll draw out Leron. I've found a way to use the data from this station to make him come to us." Cypher nodded, understanding the gravity of the next step. The pursuit of Leron was far from over, but now they had a plan. Part 22: The Betrayal on Galaxara. The lush green expanses of Galaxara stretched out beneath them as the ship descended through the atmosphere. Azarian marveled at the vast rolling hills, the vibrant forests, and the golden light bathing the planet's surface. This place was designed for peace, a retreat from the chaos of the galaxy. But the deeper they flew, the thicker the tension became, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Cypher felt it too. Something was off. "This feels wrong," Nova whispered, her eyes scanning the landscape. "Leron wouldn't just come without being prepared." Cypher nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. The plan seemed solid at first: lure Leron to Galaxara with the promise of a completed transaction and Azarian's cooperation. But now, doubt gnawed at him. Something had gone wrong. He could feel it. As they landed, the silence that had settled over the group broke when Cypher noticed strange figures in the distance, dark shapes moving with calculated precision. His heart sank. Before he could warn anyone, a squad of heavily armed soldiers emerged from the foliage, weapons drawn and aimed at the group. "Out, now!" a gruff voice barked, and the soldiers surrounded them. Cypher shot a desperate glance at Nova and Terran, the two people he thought he could still trust. But there was something in their eyes, something guilt-ridden. "You sold me out," Cypher said, his voice tight with disbelief. "After everything?" Terran shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet his gaze. "It wasn't personal, Cypher. Leron, he knows. He knows what Azarian is. And we..." He faltered, looking at Nova, who remained silent. Nova finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We had no choice." The soldiers closed in, taking Azarian first. His glowing blue form shimmered with quiet power, but he made no move to resist. His gaze lingered on Terran and Nova, and a faint, amused smile crossed his face. "You think this will end the way you expect?" Azarian said softly, as the soldiers placed him into a fortified transport vehicle lined with laser grids. "You're not as invincible as you think," one of the soldiers sneered. As Azarian was locked away, Cypher was shoved into another vehicle. His heart pounded, disbelief still coursing through him. Betrayed by the people he trusted most. Who can you trust when even your closest allies turn against you? He thought, his thoughts unraveling in a whirlwind of confusion. Part 23: Leron's Precaution. Leron received word of Azarian's capture the instant it happened. The alerts from Terran and Nova were clear. The entity they'd secured wasn't just some rare mineral sample or advanced technology. This was a sentient force with the power of an entire planet coursing through it, a being so powerful that its potential was almost limitless. And in Leron's ambitious mind, limitless potential meant limitless opportunity. But Azarian was also a threat that needed immediate control. Pacing in his ship's observation deck, Leron's mind churned through possibilities and risks. He wasn't a scientist. He was a businessman, a strategist, someone who saw profit and possibility in places others feared to tread. The idea of wielding Azarian's power was intoxicating, but it also came with a dangerous unpredictability. The years he'd spent mining Vireon, exploiting its crystals for his empire, had led him to this moment. Yet he knew that power on this scale demanded restraint, or at least, a plan that left him in full control. "He's a liability," Leron muttered to himself, his hand tapping rhythmically against his chin as he paced faster. "If I don't control him, he could destroy everything I've built." With the weight of this new risk pressing down on him, Leron's mind worked methodically, treating Azarian not as an entity to be understood but as a resource to be contained. He swiftly ordered the construction of a containment cell, an intricate laser prison engineered to hold even the most powerful entities. To Leron, this wasn't just a cage, it was an investment in his empire's future, a calculated safeguard for a potentially boundless asset. Azarian wouldn't escape, at least that's what Laron was betting on. When Azarian was finally delivered to his ship and locked inside the chamber, Laron watched from behind reinforced glass, his face a mask of composed anticipation. He felt a flicker of satisfaction as the lasers activated, encasing Azarian in a crisscrossed web of searing light. Each step the entity took would be one closer to disintegration. It was perfect. Secure. Profitable. But even as Laron relished his apparent victory, a disquiet lingered. Azarian wasn't panicking. The entity's calm, steady gaze met Laron's, filled with an unsettling intelligence that no containment, no matter how sophisticated, could fully hold. In that look, Laron saw something he hadn't anticipated, a power that transcended his meticulous plans, a quiet defiance that sent a chill through his calculated confidence. For the first time in his career, Laron felt truly outmatched. Yet, he couldn't allow himself to show weakness. With a final glance at Azarian, he steeled himself, determined to turn even this challenge into leverage. After all, in Laron's world, everything, even an ancient, sentient force, had a price. Part 24. Azarian's Escape. Azarian stood inside the laser prison, his expression unreadable. The hum of the beams filled the room, and the air crackled with tension. Any misstep, any wrong move, and the lasers would incinerate him in an instant. But Azarian wasn't afraid. In fact, he found the whole setup amusing. "Lasers, Laron?" Azarian muttered under his breath, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You really thought this would hold me?" Azarian's senses heightened as he felt every shift of the light, every pulse of energy flowing through the room. He could feel the precise angles of the lasers, each one designed to cut through anything in its path. But Azarian was no ordinary being. With a fluid, almost graceful motion, Azarian began to move. His form shifted, flowing like liquid light through the deadly grid. Each step was calculated, each movement timed with precision. He didn't just avoid the lasers, he danced through them, as though they were part of him. The beams reflected off his crystalline body, scattering in every direction like a symphony of light. Azarian's form began to change, morphing and twisting as he moved. His body became more fluid, more adaptable, as if it was water finding its way through the tightest of cracks. This wasn't just an escape, it was a transformation. As he reached the final barrier, Azarian paused, feeling the surge of power within him. With a small, almost imperceptible smile, he stepped through the last light field, unscathed. He stood in silence for a moment, savoring his victory. The lasers powered down, their threat now meaningless. "Pity," Azarian whispered to himself. "I expected more." He turned, his form solidifying once more. Now, with no restraints, Azarian's focus shifted. Laron would soon understand what it meant to play with forces beyond his control. Azarian's crystalline body glowed with newfound intensity as he made his way toward the control deck. There would be no more prisons. Laron's time was up. Part 25. The Endgame. The grand hall of Laron's flagship radiated with the soft, otherworldly glow of embedded crystals. Cypher stood at the edge of the room, his mind heavy with memories of Vireon, the planet where everything began and where everything seemed destined to end. The shard in his pocket pulsed faintly, a faint echo of the energy he had first felt back in the ruins of that research station. Across the hall, Laron raised his glass with a broad smile, addressing Terran, Nova, and Cypher as though they were accomplices to his triumph. "To new beginnings!" Laron declared. The crystal in his hand shimmered like a beacon of his ambition. "The galaxy bows to us now!" Cypher's gaze flicked to the crystal, and for a fleeting moment, he could almost hear Vireon's hum, the one that had echoed through the research station's halls so many years ago. That hum had been both a warning and a promise. Now it was back. The lights flickered. The air thickened. The room fell deathly silent, and Cypher felt the unmistakable sensation of power filling the space. He knew what was coming. Laron hesitated, his smile faltering. "What the hell is—" And then, Azarian appeared. His humanoid form glowed with an intensity that seemed to compress the room itself. Azarian's crystalline body refracted light in impossible ways, casting countless shards of color across the walls. His presence was overwhelming, each step reverberating with an unspoken judgment. Vireon, Azarian said, his voice resonant and calm, yet heavier than the crushing silence. Vireon stumbled back a step, his triumph dissolving into panic. Azarian! I couldn't have known. You must understand. Silence! Azarian interrupted, raising a hand. The room obeyed. Even the crystals embedded in the walls dimmed as if yielding to him. You've exploited Vireon and its crystals, spreading chaos across the galaxy. Azarian continued, his tone calm yet unrelenting. I warned you, Vireon. You ignored me. Now the galaxy will witness the consequences of your greed. Vireon's composure crumbled. We can fix this. We can work together. The power in these crystals, it doesn't have to end in destruction. Azarian's gaze shifted slightly, his crystalline features reflecting something akin to pity. You misunderstand, as you always have. This power was never yours to control. And now, it will undo you. The crystal in Vireon's hand began to pulse erratically, emitting bursts of light. His eyes widened in terror as the glow spread to his arm and crept across his body like frost. Wait! Vireon shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. There's still time. You can't. Azarian ignored him. The crystals embedded in the walls responded to his will, surging with power. They began to encase Vireon, inch by inch, forming a cocoon of light and stone. His screams were muffled as the crystals sealed him completely. Cypher watched in stunned silence, his thoughts racing back to the research station where this nightmare had started. The hum of the crystals had been so similar then, alive, untamed. He had been given a second chance that day. Vireon had not. Azarian turned to Cypher, his glowing eyes piercing. You feel it, don't you? The echo of what you unleashed. Cypher nodded slowly, his voice barely a whisper. This isn't balance, Azarian. This is annihilation. Azarian's form pulsed, his light intensifying. Balance is pain. The galaxy must learn that some powers are not meant to be wielded by the reckless. You, Cypher, more than anyone, should understand this. Cypher flinched, the weight of his past mistakes pressing down on him. He had once stood in the heart of destruction, holding a crystal that whispered promises of salvation. Now, he saw what those promises truly meant. Nova stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. Azarian, if you destroy everything, how is that justice? How is that balance? Azarian's gaze softened, though his voice remained steady. This is not destruction. This is renewal. The old world must end so that the galaxy can rebuild, without greed, without ambition that blinds. The ship shuddered violently as Azarian's power reached its peak. Terran grabbed Nova's arm, urgency flashing in his eyes. We're leaving. Now. Nova hesitated, casting one last look at Vireon's cocooned form, his face frozen in a grimace of terror. We can't save him, she whispered, her voice heavy with finality. Together, they sprinted to the escape pods. Cypher lingered for a moment, his gaze locked on Azarian. You're wrong, he said quietly. Pain doesn't teach balance, it only breeds more pain. Azarian's expression remained unreadable as Cypher turned and ran. The escape pods launched just as the ship began to collapse inward. Through the small viewport, Cypher watched as Azarian's power consumed the vessel, twisting its metal and shattering its structure until it was nothing but a blinding sphere of light. As the pod hurtled into the void of space, Cypher closed his eyes, the memory of the research station seared into his mind. He could almost hear the crystal's voice again, the one that had whispered, "Get up. You're not finished yet," but this time, the words were his own. "I survived once," Cypher murmured. "And I'll survive again." Beyond the viewport, the stars stretched endlessly, a galaxy poised on the brink of a new order. Somewhere out there, the future waited, a future that Cypher knew would be shaped by those willing to rebuild from the ashes.